I alluded to when I was talking to some of these teams, talking about some of these teams ahead of the deadline, that if they have big defensemen they can trade and get some value for, that's what they should do.
Mm-hmm.
And that made me think a lot about Seattle, funnily enough, because when they did their expansion draft, a lot of people were confused because they said you could have picked up guys like Tarasenko, Carey Price, and it looked like they became intentionally bad. I mean, there were a couple of, quite frankly, confusing free agent signings like Grubauer and Adam Larson. But other than that, it really seemed like they were leaning into being not a good team to start. And as soon as I saw them pick up all these guys, like they picked up, I think every defenseman they picked was over 6'2".
Okay.
They just picked a huge team. And immediately what I thought was they're going to suck for 2 years, get a whole bunch of picks at the deadline, see Connor Bedard coming in 2 years, bank on getting him, and then be incredible for like 10 years after that, because they already have Matty Beniers, who's unbelievable for Michigan. And in a worst case scenario where you don't get Connor Bedard, you'll have all those other picks and you'll still pick really high next year to have a really good prospect to go alongside him, where then you're hoping that for the next 5 to 10 years you're building a real strong team. And I think that's what their approach was, because nobody can pull a Vegas 2.0. Even if you pick Tarasenko and Carey Price, they would not have been that good. So I think you lean into sucking. I think that was the rationale. You hope to God you get a Connor Bedard, and then you're going to be one of the best teams in the league for 15 years because you have a generational player on your hands.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Maybe that's why they signed Grubauer to long term. They thought they'd take the hit on the first half of the deal, and then if they create a good core, they have a good goaltender again.
Exactly. I mean, Grubauer, I'm assuming he's going to bounce back next year because he's been historically bad. But if they were, I just found it troubling at the time because they signed a Vezina candidate goalie when they were going to be objectively a bad team. So it kind of confused me. But all that aside, I think they did have a good strategy in place of picking up these huge defensemen that always sell for a lot. You can who knows, you can recoup like a few second, third round picks. Those are valuable.
There has to be some team stupid enough to give up like a second for Adam Larson.
Well, we're talking about Mark Giordano. He's an objectively good player who might give them a first.
Yeah.
And they got him for free.
I think a first would be stupid, but I think a second is very fair.
Yeah. So they're going to get value on these guys, and hopefully it works out, because Ron Francis isn't looking too brilliant at the moment. But if he had this plan up his sleeve the whole time, give him 5 years, maybe it'll work out for them.
Yeah, very, very true. If that's all we have to say about Seattle, you brought up a very good point about Vegas, meaning that like nobody can create a Vegas 2.0. And that just grinds my gears a little bit, because when I start thinking about Vegas and this expansion draft, oh man, like I know Vegas is a fantastic team, and a lot of respect to the abilities of that organization in drafting a team that was fantastic and good so early on. But when I look at it, I think Vegas has been very good very quickly for 3 reasons. And a lot of them are, out of their control. The first one is very in their control. They drafted players from the expansion draft who magically turned out to be phenomenal. I don't know if they got lucky, but when that happens with so many guys, you have to start thinking their scouting is good. Yeah. Guys like Marchessault and Carlson. I remember Marchessault played on Florida before Vegas. I mean, he was good, but he was not this good.
Yeah.
Right? Carlson was a no-name, and he came in and scored 40.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Did they draft Tuck too? Or did they legitimately?
They got him from Minnesota.
And now like Tuck was good on that team, and he's proving himself in Buffalo again and again. That is what's in their control. I have a lot of respect for that organization. Number 2, the market in Vegas is like maybe the best market in the league. Yeah. And not only with respect to revenue generation, but with respect to where players want to play, right? Like, first of all, you play in Las Vegas. It's hot. It's dry. The climate's fantastic. It's in a very fun city.
Yeah.
I mean, like, why wouldn't free agents want to sign here? And you can see that now. Like, I know Stone and Eichel didn't come on free agency, but you would have to think they had a say in where they wanted to go if there were like no move clauses and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. Stone signed an 8-year deal the second he got traded there.
Right? It seems like you hit the jackpot when you go to play Vegas. Like, players want to play here. They got Angelo too.
Yeah.
Right? Like the market is very conducive to signing free agents. So when you mix it with the fact that these players turned out to be magically fantastic, and now they have this unbelievable opportunity to sign free agents, like, no wonder this team's going to be good for so long, right? And the third place that I have that I want to talk to you a little bit about is the cap. The cap is very, very conducive to good teams in low tax environments, right? Like when you think about it, like I just want you to tell me, how in the world is this cap not on after-tax dollars?
Yeah, the range of state and province and federal taxes makes it like it skews the landscape. I think the only reason that first maybe explain what you mean by after-tax dollars. Let's start there.
Okay, maybe that's a good idea. So for anybody who doesn't know, Vegas has zero state tax, which means that when you make $5 million as an NHL player, this is all obviously a very oversimplification, but to keep it very simple, if you make $5 million as a player, you take home $5 million. When we talk about a team like Toronto, they have a marginal tax rate of about 52 or 53%. And I mean, I know there's like progressive tax systems. We'll just keep this simple. If you make an $8 million contract, you're probably taking home a little bit over 5. So when you think about a team like Toronto versus Las Vegas, you can, as a player, go make $5 million in Las Vegas or $8 million in Toronto, and you will make more money in Las Vegas, right? When you mix that with the fact that Las Vegas is in the United States, which for some reason is great for players, and they also have a fantastic climate. Like, no wonder this team is going to attract free agents, right?
Sure.
And it just blows my mind that there are so many zero tax environments in the NHL that get all this like fantastic rap, like, oh, look at our ability to take teams on discounts. Like, bull crap. Don't tell me that Braden Point took a discount playing for Tampa when he makes what, like $7 million, right? If he makes Mitch Marner's $10 million, like the after-tax dollars on that are almost identical. Like I would like to do the math on it, but I wonder if Braden Point makes more than Mitch Marner in after-tax dollars,
he might.
right? So don't tell me that, oh, Mitch Marner is a bad guy because he doesn't take concessions for his team, where like Braden Point is like taking less money to help his team out. Like, no, he's not.
Yeah, that is such a trash argument.
Yeah.
Because when you look, you're right. When you look at all the places guys have taken discounts, people. David Poyle is a great general manager, but he gets a lot of praise for getting guys to stay at Nashville for cheaper deals. Nashville's one of those 0% zero tax, like no state tax markets.
Yeah.
So of course they're gonna stay, and I think that it makes so much sense. I had this conversation with people before. I think in theory it makes a lot of sense to have not your gross income count towards the cap, but what you make after.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, that's what you're saying. I think the only reason the owners would hate that is because a guy who gets traded from Vegas to Toronto, the owner now has to basically pay double what the owner in Vegas was paying him so that their tax evens out.
Yeah,
right?
so
the owners wouldn't like that, and they have all the power over this kind of stuff.
Very true. So maybe implement a rule that like when you trade for a player, like you take on the cap hit that team did when they signed him, right?
Yeah, there's definitely ways to work around it to make the. And funnily enough, Gary Bettman loves this cap because it produces parity. Well, we've had maybe 4 of our 6 episodes so far talking about how that's just a fallacy.
Yeah.
This is a new point that we haven't brought into it, which is a great one. It's just not. It's an objectively equal playing field, but it's just not at all once you actually like just take a second to think about it.
Yeah, does it surprise you that teams like Tampa Bay and teams like Vegas are perennial cup favorites? Like, no, it doesn't, because they effectively have like double the cap space to implement.
Yeah.
Like, you can go out and sign a guy like Steven Stamkos for $7 million and Braden Point for $7 million. I don't know if that's what they make. I'm just going to use the numbers for the sake of the argument. And look at how much more cap space you have. In order for Toronto to provide them with an equivalent take home in after-tax dollars, they would need to give both of them 12.
At least
12.
Yeah.
And then you might need to give them more money because they're playing in an environment like that isn't as good as Vegas. I know Toronto's a great market, but it's cold and players don't like playing in cold environments. So you might have to overpay for that. So when you look at a team like Tampa, there's already so much of an incentive to go, and you can sign players for cheaper with respect to the cap, but give them more money overall.
For sure.
Right? Like, no wonder Tampa has crazy amounts of depth. And if you make this cap in after-tax dollars, all of that goes away.
Yeah, that's a good point. You talked about Stamkos. I remember when the Leafs wanted to sign him, and when he was a free agent, they would have 100% had to pay more than he's making in Tampa right now. And people were saying, oh, he's staying for less because he wants to win with Tampa. It's like, that's maybe true, but it's also very convenient that he's going to just take home more money playing for Tampa.
It's very baloney. I want you to tell me a single player that takes less money to help their team win in a non-zero state tax environment.
Yeah, it's few and far between.
Does Colorado have any state tax?
They might. I'm not sure.
Yeah, if they
But
do and
still.
McKinnon's the first one, well then you know what, my argument's vindicated. Like
Well, he got this current contract. It's not a pay cut.
no,
His next one, if he does take less, but he's gonna make double digits, and I think it would only be him taking less than like maybe Mitch Marner or Austin Matthews for it to be like a pay cut, quote unquote.
I agree.
Like, yeah, you're right. You make a great point there.
I just want people to stop making the argument that Braden Point takes pay cuts. Like he doesn't. He's making more money than Mitch Marner. And I'm sorry if he's not. I don't have the math on it, but it's close. It is very close. And the last thing that I will say is that like when you look at like the Los Angeles team, excuse my stutter, the Los Angeles team in the 2010s, like that state tax is very high in California. That just speaks to how fantastic that organization was with respect to like keeping players. Those players took pay cuts because they have a marginal tax rate close to what Toronto is, right? So for that team to keep the core that they had for such a long time, I mean, good on them. Good on them.